Hello Reloaders, this video is part 1 of the version 2.40 upgrade information pack on what's new. In part 1, we will be looking at 3 new technologies: vibrator continuous charge operation, and vibrator settings automatic minimum speed setting, advanced parsing or reading of the scales, along with the new flow graph displayed on several screens, and finally the changes to the deep settings supporting the new tech. I highly recommend you back up your old profiles before starting out with version 2.4, as you will have to throw much of your prior knowledge out the window. This version operates very differently. Please also read the What's New document, as it contains additional information and instructions on how to back up your current profiles. Technology change 1. Vibration motor continuous operation during the charge cycle. Vibration motors require a starting procedure that is recommended by the manufacturer as 100% power for 30 to 40 milliseconds. In all versions prior to version 2.3, this is what we did. However, the recommended procedure gave us 2 problems. 1. The motor would sometimes stall on startup, and 2. The use of high power on start would often result in an undesirable large discharge of powder. In version 2.3, we introduced vibrator motor, impulse starting, developed here at Super Tricolor, to overcome the stalling issue. An added advantage of this method is that it also results in a softer start. At the same time, we also introduced the pulse idle speed, where the pulse did not require a motor start on each pulse. It simply jumped between idle speed and pulse speed. This turned out to be a significant advantage with some powders, however many people struggled with this version. So we took the feedback, set up a team and started looking at the problem. The root cause was found to be in the initial vibrator speed setup, where many users were not setting up the speed correctly. Further to this, we also discovered that our recommended settings were not ideal for the pulse idle speed, as it could leave too much energy in the vibrator tube, for some extruded powders. The system had some advantages, but also some disadvantages. So the aim with version 2.4 was to take our learned lessons, keep the positives and overcome the negatives. So back to the continuous vibrator motor operation. The advantages of keeping the vibration energy in the powder, and not allowing the motor to completely stop, avoids the need to start the motor and thus, avoids the initial burst of powder. It operates as follows. Just after the bulk motor is started, the vibrator motor will start up and assist in the bulk filling. Just before the bulk is completed, the vibrator motor is switched to idle. The vibrator motor will remain running the entire time, until the charge and final stabilization time is complete. When an instrument requires the vibrator, it simply ramps it up to the desired running speed, then back down to idle. The idle speed is set well below the powder delivery speed. Do not confuse this with the pulse idle speed, where the speed is within the delivery range, and we will talk more about this later. Technology 2. Automatic vibrator speed minimum setting. Setting up the initial vibrator speed has always been a pain in the bleep. We have also found that the vibrator rubber mount's elasticity can change with temperature and operational time. The ideal difference between the 2 speeds is exactly 100 units, as this can then be represented as exactly 1 unit per percent. But this is not always achievable, so keep that in mind when setting your maximum speed. This all combined with a need to set a more accurate and consistent minimum setting, led to the development of the automatic minimum setting and semi-automatic maximum setting of the vibrator speed. The setting of the minimum speed is completely different from previous versions, with the new idle speed technology. The system is now looking for a minimum value below the powder delivery range. So to begin with, press the auto speed button, near the bottom right. The system will record the current difference between the min and max speed settings. Then the vibrator motor will start, at a speed just below the maximum speed, to ensure the vibrator tube is fully primed. After a short time, the speed will begin to reduce and the system will be monitoring the flow, looking for the ideal minimum speed at a consistent flow rate, somewhere between 700 milliseconds and 2 seconds. When this is completed, the vibrator will stop. The maximum speed will be set to the same difference as at the start of the process. The selector will switch to the maximum speed, ready for you to make any adjustments needed. This is the same as all previous versions, fast enough and ideally 100 units above the minimum speed, ensuring powder is not significantly bouncing out of the cup. This maximum speed should only ever need setting once. However, you can come back at any time to trim up the automatic minimum speed as often as you like, and I would suggest at the start of each session, or if you are finding your previously good profile settings are starting to get off track. Why we are here. You will now see the vibrator settings has a new graph showing you the flow, with information of the flow value, smooth flow value, time between changes detected by the scale, and the graph scale range. To change the graph scale, simply touch the graph and it will toggle around to the next scale range. This exact graphical representation is also now shown on the motor test screen and all of the instrument test screens. In version 2.3, we introduced a new scale data parser, or in other words a new way of reading the scale's information stream. The reason behind this change was a way to remove the possibility of an operator accidentally dropping powder while the scale was transmitting metric grams, instead of imperial grains. This new system looks at the data stream and interprets if the data received is imperial or metric. If the data is in imperial grains, the value is read and passed through the rest of the system. However, if the data is found to be in metric grams, the value is converted back into grains before being passed through. The process is seamless and always ensures the scale value returns an imperial grains value. Please note, this only works for metric grams and not other weighing modes such as percentages, pounds or carats. Now to the deep setting that supports the new tech. We do not recommend ever changing any deep setting without the guidance from Peter, Rex or an highly advanced user. The first of the new settings is the auto vibrator timeout. This dictates the length of time the vibrator auto setting should wait to ensure the reading is stable before accepting the settings. Too short and you might get an inappropriate minimum value. Too long and the system might start hunting up and down. Next is the idle off margin. This is the speed reduction below the 1% speed value the system will use for the vibrator idle speed. Too small, and the system might become unstable and difficult to use, and too big and you might take the motor to the point where it stalls from underspeed. Okay then, that's it for part 1. It is critical to understand the changes to the vibrator continuous operation, the importance of the vibrator automatic speed setting, to have a look at the new scale data parser. It's been a good chance to see the new graphical flow display, and finally a quick look into the deep setting changes. Be sure to keep an eye out for part 2 of the version 2.4 update, where we will look at the changes to the profile, operation, functionality and options. So until next time, straight shooting and happy reloading, from Rex and Peter.